a sale is made on every call. Either your belief in that product or your service will help the prospect solve their problem will win, or their concerns will win. You sell them on your conviction, or they will sell you on their concerns. Either way, a sale is made on every call.
If you're the owner of a small business, you head up a sales team, or you do your own sales, then this is the ultimate video that you need to take you from the start of the sales process all the way to the end when you have closed your client. If you're in the business of selling a service, then this video is exactly what you need. It's going to give you the A to Z of the whole thing. If you're selling a product, the process is going to be a lot faster for you and a lot simpler as well. The video you're about to see is a training that I did with a London council, and it's going to be used for the official training guide for them. So you know this is of top quality. If you have any questions throughout the video or comments, then put it in the comment below. Subscribe, hit the like button, and let's get this video.
Basically, I want to think about sales slightly differently as just conversations, okay? So anytime I say sales, I want to think about just conversations. Let's first shift your mindset. Okay, we've got, what are the perceptions that people have about sales? If anybody has it, put it in the chat what you think it is. If you're watching a replay, just maybe think about what it is. In the workshops that we normally deliver, there's a few things that come out as a commonality. So it's always said that it's a necessary evil. Say that it's, it gives you a weird feeling. And there's also tactics involved that I don't like that. Or it's really hard and I don't want to do that. It feels gross. It's kind of sleazy. People think that it might be manipulative. And of course, again, necessary evil, if I haven't mentioned it already. But the most important one that keeps coming up is that I'm not good at it, right? So most people will say that they're not good at sales. And so this mindset, just think about it. Will that allow you to make sales in your business? I don't know. But let's think about a story for a second. Let's use a dentist as an example. Let's say your tooth hurts, are in massive pain. So what do? You say, okay, I want to go to a dentist. So you maybe search up in your local area if you haven't registered already with a dentist. And you say, I don't know what the problem is. So I'll go with the dentist that has the most reviews. And you go, you get your tooth fixed. The dentist will probably give you an understanding of what else is going on. And then there you go, right? You're kind of done. So you pay and job done. Now, question to you is, did the dentist sell to you at this point? I want you to think about it. Did they sell to you? At the end of the day, of course they did, because they solved a problem for you. You paid them, the transaction's over. But for most of the time, people will think it's not sales because, of course, I had a problem. I want to get it fixed. Of course, I pay for it. So why don't you think about it like that for your own business, right? So you've got to think about the fact that the dentist is solving a problem. It's kind of like how you might want to solve a problem, right? So in your business, you've got to believe that your product or service that you're offering genuinely solves a problem for your customer, and that way you will never have a problem with sales again, because you genuinely believe in your product, just like a dentist would genuinely believe that what they're doing is going to help you out. So selling, you got to reshift that mentality into serving. And that's the mentality I want you to have throughout this entire presentation, okay? So anytime you talk about sales, instead of thinking about the feeling of it all, just think that you're serving your customer. In fact, if you don't serve them, or if you don't sell to them, you're doing them a disservice, because they might then go to a competitor who is worse than you, have a bad experience, waste their money, and so on. So you want to alleviate all those problems and instead be good at what you do and sell to your customers. Let's remember this, okay? Sales is the oxygen for your business. You need sales in order to survive in the business. Here's what we'll cover today. Especially if you're new to business, you got to remember, you probably just started it because you wanted something different, or you had a passion you wanted to follow. You didn't realize that you were signing up to also become a salesperson. So this is going to really help you out into changing how that works. Let's start off with this overall sales process. Instead of it being a preconceived notion, we'll just break it down into these 4 little different segments. The things we're going to focus on are in the yellow there. So it's a sale and the closing aspect of it. I wanted to separate the two out because normally people think sales is the whole thing. But the moment you initiate or you mention the price, you begin the closing pattern, right? And that's when the real sales job begins. Until then, you're just listening. So of course, everything around that is the fact that you need to have your lead generation right and your delivery system on point. Remember, there's 2 things to remember. First is, before you get into this sales cycle or whatever you're offering, you need to make sure you're in the right market and you have the right offer. And this is really how it works, okay? So if your offer, or if you're in a growing market, you basically can't lose. An example is, and if you have the right offer in the growing market, right? So an example is when COVID hit, if you were selling masks, you would win, right? It doesn't matter if you're a good salesperson or not, you would win. But most of the time, most of us are in the right, like normal market, and we have probably a normal offer. And therefore, we have to be good at sales. But the other thing that a lot of people forget is after you've closed and got them as a client, you still need to follow up and reclose. So in the delivery stage, right, you've got to follow up and reclose, because that's how you keep the client and you potentially increase your lifetime value with them. But those are different trainings. But I want to put them in here just so that you're aware of the importance of what you're doing. There are 6 main stages when it comes to sales conversions. And these 6 stages is that, you know, you're going to build rapport, you got to figure out why they're here, dive into their pain points, figure out their desires and outcomes, the offer and objections, and then closing logistics. I'll dive into all of those in detail in a second, but you just have to realize that those are the 6 key stages. And the times above it is just an example for a 1-hour sales call that you might have. If you've been following the process that Ray has been teaching so far, then most of the sales revolves around conversation and not just the preconceived notion, right? And also the assumption we're making here is that this is a high ticket item. So you're not selling something that's like a 10-pound widget, like a widget spinner or something. Yeah, that doesn't require any of this. But if you're selling something of substance that requires a transaction between you and the customer, and they're getting a longer value cycle from this, whether it's a product or a service, you need it. Something that's really important to realize is sales is all about emotions, right? It's your emotions and the emotions of the other person that you're talking to. So we need to be aware of how the emotions change throughout this whole 6-stage process. So here's the neutral line, which is for the emotional cycle. And as you go through, you will take the prospect up and down their emotion cycle. So this red thing is the lead's emotions, right? So at some point in the beginning, you'll go up, some in the middle, you'll be down, and then up again. So I'll explain all of those as we go on. Also to remember is that this is not a means for you to just convince the prospect of something. Okay, so the idea of sales is it's a game to get them to decide. And it's not always to say yes, it can be a no, and that can be a decision too. But the idea is the lead has to understand what's happening, and it can be a no from your side, right? Not every person you speak to is going to be a good fit. So your job is to understand, diagnose, and then help them to make a decision. That's it. It's not for you to get the yes. So if you're thinking about, hey, you're going to give you a bunch of tactics to just get the yes. Yeah, sure, you'll get that. But most importantly, you need to remember it's not about the yes. Detach your success from the yes, and you'll get so much more progress in your thing. The other assumption that this model makes is that you will get the close after 1 call. And the reason I'm harboring on this point is because that's not always going to happen. Many times you might have to do 2 calls to get it closed. And depending on how warm the audience is, your sales ability will change. So if you're doing 2 or 3 calls, you basically follow the same cycle again in a different way. But the most important thing is you need to follow up with them in between the calls to make sure they're still excited. Okay, because you want to keep that upward trajectory. Okay, so we're building rapport. Now, I'm sure most of you already know everything about building rapport, so I'm not going to harbor too much on the points about how you can build rapport, but the most important thing for you to realize this is people buy from people, not just a product, right? And also they buy mostly from people that they can relate to or they want to be like. So you've got to position yourself as a person who's really there to help them to figure out what their problem is. Okay, so the saying that I heard once from a mentor of mine that I really like is that a sale is made on every call. Okay, either your belief in that product or your service will help the prospect solve their problem will win, or their concerns will win. So you sell them on your conviction, or they will sell you on their concerns. Either way, a sale is made on every call. You've got to show that you're on their side when you come to this point, because otherwise they won't believe you. Percentages are quite important because the exact number value is not as important as the magnitude. The physiology that you use is so much more important than what you say, right? And how you say it is so much more important than the words you actually use. So when you lean into the conversation, when you lean back, when you take your tone up or bring it back down. You slow it down, speed, all those things make a massive difference. But I'm sure you guys kind of know about those things, but that will massively dictate how well your connection with the person will go. Once you've spent a little bit of time building that rapport, thanking them for being on the call, you really want to find out why they're there. And this is really important. We see so many people skip this and straight to be like, okay, let me tell you about my product. Okay, you better remember, like, they don't care, right? They don't really care about any of us in reality. They don't really even care about the product and how good it is. All they care about is that they have a problem and they want it resolved. Just like when you go to a doctor, right? You don't really care about the doctor's background, all this kind of stuff. And, you just want your problem resolved. So you've got to think about it in that lens. So ask them why they booked a call, with you, and why they're taking their time out of their day to spend it with you, because they could be doing 1,001 different things, but they've chosen to spend it with you. So what is it that they're looking to solve? The important thing here is you'll probably hear a lot of people say, oh, I'm just here to collect information. So that can't really be true, right? Because there's information is plenty. They can just Google information, in like thousands of articles will come up. So, but they're talking to you. So remember that most people will not want to talk to you about that they're struggling. They don't want to tell you that they have a problem. So you've got to dig in a little bit deeper and ask them why. I'm going to use an example throughout this whole thing that will hopefully allow you to kind of relate to this. I'm going to use a weight loss example because everybody can relate to it. So let's say somebody comes on a call and you say, hey, why are you here? And they say, I don't know, I just want to find out, like how to lose some weight. You're like, great, go Google something. Like you'll find out loads of things about it. But why are you spending time with me to find out? What is it exactly you want to find out about losing weight, right? So then you can kind of find out a little bit more about what they hope to kind of get out of this whole thing. Now, as you can see sometimes, this is something that we will spend a lot of time on. Okay, again, this is just a ratio. If you're doing a 45-minute call, 2-hour call, use the ratios as you like. But the whole point is you want to spend a significant amount of time really understanding what their pains are, what their current situation is. Then you can really get a full picture of it, right? You can't diagnose a problem before you know really what the problem is all about. So also, if you can hear some weird tunes behind me, there's an ice cream truck that's decided to come by. So if anybody's hungry. So we want to spend a lot of time to really exhaust the pains, okay? And it does two things. One is it gives you the full picture that you need. And the second thing, which is even more important, is that it gives them the full picture of their pains and it brings it into the forefront of their mind. So until now, they might be hiding from their pains, right? They might be hiding from what the problem they really have is because it's scary to confront it. So by you digging into it, it's going to bring it into the forefront and then they can't hide it anymore. So no one wants to admit that they have a problem, and especially not to a stranger. This is why the rapport thing is so important. So if you've done your job so far, then you'll be able to help them bring it out because you're showing them that you're on their side. Okay, you've won their trust, and then you're getting them to open up, really to understand what is their current situation, right? So let's use a weight loss example. So like I said, here, the whole point is to ask them open-ended questions to dive deeper into understanding the problem, right? So in the weight loss thing, you might be saying, okay, you found out that they're overweight. So now, like, okay, cool. So what, right? You want to get in a little bit deeper. So how is it impacting your life right now? Why is this currently a problem for you? And most of the time, you really want to ask them, like, how does it make them feel? Because they might not be wanting to tell you, or they might not be wanting to admit it to themselves how it makes them feel. So you want to keep kind of asking them that. And you can also dive into other things, right? In this example of weight loss one, let's just say you're going to say, okay, well, how is it impacting your life? What about your spouse? What do they think? What about your friends? What do they think? How does it make you feel at work? Like, what else is impact? Like, what else or what other areas in your life is it impacting? Again, how does it make you feel? And the key thing there is a fourth bullet point about what have you tried before that hasn't worked? That's super important, right? So when you're asking all these questions, you're getting deeper and deeper and deeper into their emotional being. Remember that, like, up and down cycle that you saw, the red one, we'll bring it back up in a second. You get really deep into their emotions, right? So they're following along with you. They're now opening up and they're kind of pouring their heart out. Maybe some things that they've not told anyone before. This happens, by the way. I use the weight loss example is an easy one for people to understand, but it's also something that I started with in the beginning. And a lot of people would say, yeah, I'm overweight. Yeah, I want to lose a little bit of weight, whatever. But then once you start getting deeper, you really understand the extent of which it's affecting their life, like how embarrassed they feel when they stand on presentations, or, how they can't talk to people or go out and eat, and all these kind of different things that's really affecting their life. Now you really understand what it is, like Ray said, the big key that's really holding them back, right? Like the real problem that's behind all of the surface level issues that they're telling you about. The most important thing here is to empathize along the whole way. Don't be judgy. Don't impose your own thoughts and feelings and whatever your beliefs are onto them. Just have open-ended questions where you are just understanding. Right? The idea is to get them to tell you more stuff. That's it. You're not solving their problem. You're just finding out what it is. You want to find out what they've tried before to try to solve this thing and it hasn't worked. It gives you a couple of things. One is you realize that you're not the first person they're talking to, right? Or you're not the first solution. So it gets them to reflect a little bit on like the number of tries that they've had. And so they can be like, wow, I've tried a lot of things that haven't worked, right? So they can be like, oh, I need the next thing that actually works. But the second thing is they might have tried the same thing that you're about to offer. So you can then see, oh, is this actually a good fit? Like, can I actually help them? Or if you can, oh, how do I then position my offer so that it actually helps them or tells them that it can actually solve their problem and not leave them in the same situation they already were in, right? So it gives you a little bit more data. This whole point, you're just getting more data. We can then move on to their desired outcomes. And this is really, really important because, think about it this way. Once their emotional state is down, as you can see in the red line there, we've got them up, and then in the pains, they're like down, deep, heavy emotions. You want them to be there. And as a business owner, a salesperson, it's your job to be comfortable sitting in that level of emotion. And this will come with practice, but you've got to be okay with doing that. But just like a doctor will ask you loads and loads of questions, a dentist will look literally inside your mouth before they can tell you what's up and provide you a solution, you're doing the same thing. So don't feel bad about it. You're really understanding the whole picture so that you can really diagnose what it is and then offer the solution that actually makes sense. So because emotions are at the forefront and they now see how bad the problem is, they'll be more willing to hear your fix for it because they really want it right now, right? And so you want to be able to ask them, what is it that they're looking for? So like a good question there is in the title, like, hey, if there was a magic wand, or if I had a magic wand and I could make all your pains disappear, what would a good solution look like? It sounds really cringy, but I actually quite like this question because it usually gets a couple of chuckles. It releases them from that like super heavy emotions and it'll start bringing them back up into making them feel good about what they're talking about, right? So they're like, oh yeah, I want this, I want that, I want that. Obviously in the weight loss example, the best thing would be them to buy your thing, then instantly they look down, they have a six pack, right? And it lasts them forever. So they had to put no effort in, they just had to spend their money and they got the result that they can keep for a lifetime. That would be a priceless offer. But of course, that's not reality. So what they will tell you is the next best thing. And hopefully that next best thing is exactly what you have to offer, right? Or close enough. So this question, or a variation of question, if you don't like this one, you can use to find out exactly what they want, how they want it, and by when they want it, right? This will really get you going. Now here's a trigger question that I really like as well that Ray had put in, which is you want them to also admit that they have a problem, right? So you can ask them, hey, okay, so far you've told me that you are currently at X, the position they're in. And you've told me now that you want to get to Y, the position they want to get to. So tell me, what's stopping you from getting there on your own? Yeah, they might be like, why are you asking me that question? Like, I just told you for the last half an hour that I can't get there on my own. Like, why are you asking me? But it gets them to admit it to themselves, right? So far, they've just hidden and it's just been in different segments. And you want to really get them to admit that they have a problem that they can't solve on their own. Super, super, super important because people are creatures of habit and people are also creatures of consistency. So if they've admitted something, it's really difficult for them to go back on their word later on. No problem. So let's use the weight loss example, right? If they say that they're 10 kilos overweight, now they want to be fit and healthy, and they want to do it in 6 months, and they want to do it without giving up their wine, you'd be like, great, okay, now I understand. Some other instances, they might just say, actually, I can't do it on my own. I need to do X, Y, Z, or whatever. Like, I just need to do it. Then you can say, okay, like, great, thanks, but we don't need to continue this conversation anymore, because if they answer it with saying that they can do it on their own, then either they are like lying to themselves, or genuinely they can do it on their own, and then they don't need your help. So if that's the case, then you say, cool, they don't need your help. So you can call them out, and you can literally just say, okay, great, thanks for letting me know. Then it seems you don't need my help, so no point for us to continue this conversation. So we might as well save ourselves some time and give yourself some time back. Usually what happens is they'll come back and say, oh, no, actually, I do want your help, or yeah, actually, I could do it on my own, but I have blah, blah, blah problems, right? Then they'll tell you what the problem is. And if they genuinely don't have a problem, then okay, let them walk away, because they'll be a bad client anyway. So this is a really important thing that most people will not do, because it's too scary, because you're afraid that the person will walk away and you'll lose the sale. But trust me, you haven't had the sale anyway, if they tell you that at this point, right? Or it'll be a really difficult sale, and you will just have a bad client on your hands. So asking this question is really going to save you a lot of headache. And it will, if they do give you the problems, then suddenly it's going to be really hard for you to not have the sale, because they've already admitted to you everything else. You need to there needs to be some significant issues for you to not get the sale after this. So it will really, really help you to get this next process going. So the next point of this is the whole idea of you can offer the solution that you have, right? Because you found out what their problem is. You have found out that they can't do it on their own. And you've asked them the question to make sure that you've clarified everything they've said so far, right? You've clarified that, hey, this is your problem, right? Yes. This is what you want, right? Yes. And you can't do it on your own, right? Yes. Okay, great. Now you can offer your solution. You can use this as a bridge, right? Until now, you've probably done like 90% listening. All you've done is ask some strategic questions to dive deeper and find out what's going on. And you've taken notes. So you have all the data points you need. So now now you can have a little bit more discussion, right? So you can offer your solution, and you can do it in a way that asks for permission. The weight loss example, let's say, Tom, you said you are overweight and you want to lose 10 kilos in the next 6 months, but you want to still drink wine. Is that right? Yes. And if it's a no, then they might correct you, and that's okay too. And then you say, okay, great. I've got something that can help you achieve that. Cool if I share that with you? Now, you're just kind of asking this question, and they're like, of course, right? Like, hey, you told me that I told you this problem. You have exactly what I need. Okay, yeah, of course I want to find out more. So now it's your chance to offer your solution. And the great thing here is, like, I love this phrase, it's sell the vacation and not the flights. Right, and this is so important. And there's multiple different phrases like this, like sell the sizzle, not the steak, all these different things. But I like the vacation and the flights example, because you think nobody wants to know that they have to put in like 6 days a week in the gym and eat clean and macros, all this other random stuff, weekly check-ins. No one wants all those things. They just want to know that they've lost their weight. They've done whatever you tell them to do, and they've lost their weight. So you got to sell the vacation and not the flights and the wait times. There's a few ways you can structure your offer, right? So use everything they've told you so far to position your solution as the perfect offer that you've got. Okay, and this is a super simple way to do it. And here's the 3 different ways that you can put it up. First is you say, I help people like the prospects, the way the person said, Tom, who's overweight, in our example, achieve their desired result. That's the simplest way that you can put it. So, I help people who are 10 kilos overweight lose their weight in 6 months. That's a simple one, right? Second option, I help the lead achieve their desired result so that whatever. So, in the Tom example, you can say, hey, I help people who are 10 kilos overweight lose that weight by still drinking wine so that they can go present confidently and have everybody admire them. Okay, great. Wow, I definitely want that, right? But the next one is a slightly more detailed version, depending on how much information you've got, is going to be super helpful. And you basically say, like, what is their biggest objection to this? right? Their whole like, oh, their wine thing, right? Or that this Tom example doesn't want to work out 6 days a week or whatever. So if your solution can hit their biggest point or pain point, you can formulate this last sentence, this is gold, right? Because that person now really, really feels like what you've got is exactly made for them. Literally their exact problem, their exact outcome, their exact objection is all being met by your one thing. So if you can figure that out for your business, and you can practice articulating that in such a smooth way that it just comes off, you'll be so well off when you do your sales calls with people. And the important thing is, after this, you just be quiet, right? You tell them what you do and what your solution is, and then you just be quiet. Normally people will go like, oh, and I do this, and then because of that, you get this feature, and the 6 month program, all this kind of stuff. Not important. Not right now. You just be quiet. Right? Remember what I said. You got to be good with the silence. Okay, so you be quiet, and then they will be so intrigued that they want to ask you questions about it, because they're like, wow, this is made for me. Like, tell me more. How does this work? Like, how do I sign up? What do I have to do? How many hours is it? Like, you know, they're then quizzing you on how they can enroll themselves into the program. They're now trying to figure out how it fits in their life. This is the same, you know, if it's a service or product, they're basically figuring out how it fits into their lives, the way it is. Use everything that you've learned by the conversations you've had with the lead so far. It's going to massively help you craft a statement. And like I said, the main important thing here is after you mention the product, don't say anything, and definitely don't overpromise, because there's nothing worse than overpromising something, and then when they go to your service or product, it doesn't deliver. You'll get bad reviews. Don't do that. It's better to underpromise and overdeliver than overpromise and underdeliver, always. So once you've stated the price, right, in your whole question answer position, you know, you've explained away all of their concerns and every question they've had, you've just answered, then they're going to ask you, like, how much does it cost? You know, what do I have to do to get in? Now you state the price, and again, you be quiet. Trust me, these are the only two kind of tactics that you really need to use, but it's so important. Okay, so you say the price, and then you just zip it. Sit in the silence. So important. Most salespeople, most business owners, most new people, most seasoned people won't really do this because it's so awkward. But guess what? It's also awkward to the other person. And so they will fill in, and you want them to fill in the silence, because then you will really understand what it is that they're struggling with, right? You really understand what objections they have, and you want objections. And here's a crazy thing. Everybody's like, oh my God, I need to handle objections. You know, I need to like combat them. I really don't like using those terminology, because it shows that you are in conflict with them, which is exactly against everything we've talked about so far. Right? Everything we've done so far is to show that we're on their side to help them make a decision. So now if you're handling objections, you are being inconsistent with the person you were, and it's not very authentic. So we don't want to do that. So when we say handle objections here, and I want you guys to think about it this way, when you handle objections, you want to guide them. It's more like you're coaching them through figuring out their problems. Because the main thing to remember is objections come from their inner limiting beliefs and their concerns that what they're putting their money into is not going to return. And I have in the next slide, we'll talk about objection handling for a bit, but that's really the main problem, right? They're just worried that they're going to make a bad decision. That's it. So you want to guide them through understanding what the decision they should make is. If it's a no, that's fine. If it's a yes, that's great. You don't want them to be in this maybe limbo situation. That's just not good for anyone. Okay? So you have literally until now just been getting their trust and really understanding them. So you have all of the data that you need in order to challenge these fears and concerns, because they've already told you all their problems, right? So you don't need to worry about not knowing stuff, because whatever fears they throw at you, you can be like, great, I know what you've just told me before. You just relay their sentences back to them, and they're like, oh yeah, I did say that, right? Now, let's say all these objection handling goes well, and you get to the point where you're getting a verbal commitment to move forward. There are three different ways that you can do it. You can either ask a positive question, a neutral question, or a negative question. And I'll give you an example for each. So a positive question might be like, Okay, they've answered all your questions. They're like, great, cool if we get started right away, or shall we sign you up and get you started on Monday? It's a positive question, right? And also note my tonality where I'm like, Monday? This is more like a happy, energetic, like, hey, you want to start? Let's go, right? It's all positive. The chances are, if they say yes, or if they say no, then you can guide them through more of those conversations, and that's fine. And you want to ask these questions over and over and over, right? After batting each objection that comes your way, you can ask them, cool, ready to go? Are you ready to sign up? Right? So they're basically ready to go. The neutral question, I quite like this one more than the positive one, because again, it's more consistent with the kind of person that you've been so far, right? You're helping them make a decision. And so now you're like, great, now you've understood all these things. We should get started straight away and get you the results as soon as possible. Fair enough, right? Then it's neutral, right? Like, fair enough. Like you told me you had a problem. You told me you wanted a solution. I gave you this exact solution that you want. Let's go, right? So that's very neutral, and that's kind of how you go. The negative question, which some people really like, it's basically based around the theory that people like to say no more than they like to say yes. So you can just ask a no-based question where it's like, would you be totally against us going forward right now? Or like, would you be totally opposed to getting started on Monday? You see, it's kind of like trickery, but then they'll be like, no, I guess I won't be totally opposed to it. And you're like, great, it's basically yes, let's go. So there's a couple of different ways that you can do it, but hopefully that will help you understand that you can go forward. But the key thing to remember, and I think a lot of people forget this, because you've come so far, people are invested. Like, as a salesperson, you are personally invested in getting the yes. But remember what I said right in the beginning, you got to detach yourself from the yes. It's just a decision. So you have to be prepared to walk away, right? So if they say like, oh no, yeah, I'm ready, but I want to start in 3 months, you can be like, cool, that's great. You were a great fit, but look, you're just not right for us, because we want people who want to get results now, not in 3 months. So it's not a right fit. And trust me, when you pull that away, you pull the offer away from them, they have the same feeling as you, right? They spent almost an hour sitting with you so far, so they're going to want to continue. So they're not going to want to be like, okay, cool, see you later, bye. Of course, you might get one or two of those, but most of the time, they'll probably come back and talk to you about their concerns. So be prepared to walk away. Here's a quick slide on closing an objection. This can be a whole separate webinar on its own, because there's so many different tactics and skills and whatever you can do. But the most important thing to remember is this would just come with practice. Objection handling is literally, if you think about it as a guide, a mechanism to guide them through a decision, you will be fine. Okay, don't overthink this. If they come with objections, that's great, because they're trying to figure out how it fits in their life. As long as you can show them how it fits in their lives, you are good. There's 3 main objections that keep coming up. And if you've done everything so far, you have all of the data you need to address these, okay? And you can literally say to them, what is the cost of inaction, right? If they don't want to move this forward and they don't want to do anything, what's the cost of inaction? What's going to happen if you don't change? Like Tom example, hey Tom, look, you told me that you're 10 kilos overweight, and in 6 months you want to lose that 10 kilos, you want to still keep drinking wine and whatever. You told me that your spouse is angry with you because you don't fit in clothes and they have to buy new ones or whatever. Like, what will happen if you don't make the change right now? How much longer are you willing to sit with this? Right? It will get them to think, because they've just told you all these problems, so you can use them. And so let's go through the 3 points there. Okay, one thing is, the 3 common objections is, I don't have money, I don't have time, and I want to speak to my spouse or partner, business partner, whatever. It's almost never price. And that's something we've come to find out. You can read loads of sales books and you'll find the same thing. It's almost never price, because price just means one of these 3 things. Either they don't believe you, i.e. you don't have enough conviction in what you're saying that it will actually work, so they don't believe you, or that they don't think it will work for them, so you haven't done enough of a good job to help them understand why it will work for them specifically, or they don't think they have what it takes to make it happen. Right? So you've got to just ask those questions. So you can be like, hey, let's put prices. If they say it's too expensive, they can be like, let's put price aside for now. If it wasn't for the price, would you go ahead with us? Do you believe in our product? Do you believe that it will work for you? And do you believe that you have what it takes to move forward? when I answer the question, it's usually that it's a yes, especially that, are you committed to make it happen? Because they'll be like, yeah, of course I am. Like, they don't want to say that they're not good, right? They're not high performers. You say to them, let's put price aside and figure out what else is the problem. You can address those concerns, then the price goes away and then you can bring it back in, right? If the price is, if they say, okay, cool, if, you know, with the price aside, would you go ahead? And they say yes to everything else, you can now discuss the payment terms. Because maybe they just don't have the cash to put in upfront. But if you offer a payment plan, they'll go for it. It could be a simple fix. The second one is, I don't have time. And this is super simple. Like, the time issue, you can just combat by being like, hey, you know, is it that you don't have time? Or is it that you don't want to make time? You know, what is important here? Next one is, I need to speak to my partner, my boss, my accountant, whatever. And those are usually a stall. And that stall is just that they don't want to make a decision right then and there because they're afraid that they might make the wrong decision. So usually what it is if they want to speak to their spouse, like their spouse is probably already unhappy with their current situation. So you can be like, hey, you've told me that they're already unhappy with this. Would they be unhappy if you want to change? You know, like the Tom example, like, would your spouse really be unhappy that you've lost 10 kilos in 6 months and now you can present really well and you're getting all this praise from work? Would your spouse really be unhappy? Right? So chances are it's no, right? And then you can be like, okay, well, you know, if your spouse is going to be happy with this, then shouldn't you make the decision right now? Finally, we get to the closing logistics of it all. And this is super simple. And that's just like sending the proposal, right? Like, you want to make sure that you've actually sent them the documents that they need, or like process the payment, send them the contract and all that kind of stuff. And ultimately, you just need to congratulate them for making the decision, because that's probably a hard thing for them to do. So whether it be on the first call, second call, third call, whatever it is, you want to congratulate them for making a decision. And again, follow up right after that. Do what you say you're going to do. Most people will judge your program, your service, your product within 48 hours of joining. And you can see, like, most refunds will happen during that time because they are unhappy with how they've been treated after they've just put their money forward. Especially if it's a lot of money, there's a 48-hour freak out period, right? People are like, oh my God, I made the right decision, I made the wrong decision. So the more upfront value you can show to them and the more customer service you can show to them, the more likely it is that they'll just continue staying. So closing logistics, you know, just tell them what's going to happen and make sure you do it. There are 7 skills that you need to master for sales conversations. Okay, and we'll touch on what happens if you're not having conversations. But so far, hopefully you've understood that what you need to do is actively listen, you know, show that you actually care about them. Mirroring is a really good tip to build rapport, especially if you're on Zoom, you can still do it, right? You know, if they sit like this, you also sit like this, simple thing. You have to be intentional with the tones you use, because that's going to make a massive difference to how people perceive you and how you come across to them. Remember the percentages we showed before. You have to be empathizing with their situation the whole time, whether it be right, you know, when you're closing or when you're starting off to build rapport. The whole time you need to be empathetic towards their situation, and that's going to literally propel you 99% ahead of most other salespeople, because, you know, the normal perception that we talked about right in the beginning is that salespeople don't care. They just care about the money. You got to make sure that you show them you're there to help them figure out what their problem is and not just grab their money. So it's super important. You need to be willing to ask tough, open-ended questions. This is the how, what, when, why, super important, because that's going to help them get deeper into their problem, right? And they can speak. You really want to stay away from yes, no questions unless you're clarifying, because you don't want to end the conversation. You want to be on the listening end. They want to be on the speaking end. So you want to do that. Okay. And simply articulating what you do. That just means when it comes to the offer position, you need to be able to just reel off what you do. Super simple. Do not overcomplicate it. No jargon. I know a lot of you who are in the marketing situations or kind of tech companies, you want to show them that you're valuable, like you know what you're talking about. So you want to use jargon in there. But remember, like, they don't know, they might not know, and they also might not care. So the more easily they can understand what you do, the more likely it is that you'll get a sale. So when there's confusion, there's no sale. So you don't want them to be confused. And also they don't want to look stupid. So if they don't understand something, they're not going to ask you, right? They're not going to be like, hey, what did that mean? Like, you know, you're saying, oh yeah, you know, my CPC is this, or, you know, my CPA is this, my SaaS company does this. If they don't know what it means, they're not going to ask you. And then they just don't know what you do. So keep it simple. And finally, be okay with the silence. Sitting in the silence is a key skill that if you master, you will love sales, because you want them to speak. Okay, so that's the most important thing. Look, you're there to solve their issues or diagnose their issues. You're on their side. So if you're helping a friend, you're not going to just shut your friend down, right? You're just going to want your friend to ask as many things as they want and talk. So think about it the same way. If you're sending it a proposal and you're not speaking to them in person, this can happen if you're in B2B, don't send it to them. Don't just send it to the prospect, because then they will just come straight to the price and your product or service will become a commodity. Okay, it's just a price comparison between 5 or 6 different proposals they've got, and they'll just probably choose the cheapest one. So don't want to do that. Instead, you want to set an appointment time and talk them through it. And that way you can articulate your value, and then they can compare the value they're getting with you versus other people who have just sent their proposals in. You'll win the contract. Very likely, even if you're more expensive. And of course, it'll also give you the opportunity to discuss their concerns. And if you're selling without a conversation, so if you're just selling on a sales page because it's a low ticket item or something like that, then the copy is what makes all the difference. Okay, so you're copying, copy meaning whatever you've written on your sales page. And so you need to be having your copy in a very storytelling format. The format that I really like is hook, story, call to action, that's CTA, evidence, and then call to action again. So hopefully you guys know what all these things are. If you've been following along the training so far, then you should know all these things. But hook is why they should care, right? Straight off the bat. Story about why they should care about you, what you've got to deliver. The offer, of course. And then when you get to the call to action, it's asking them to sign up or enroll or whatever it is. Then providing evidence. So all the testimonials and case studies that you've got so far. And then another call to action at the end. That's a really simple structure. Follow that, it'll be good. But the copy inside, whatever you're writing, has to basically be really good, because it has to understand the prospect really, so just to speak to them specifically. And you want to also already know what their objections are so that you can handle them and talk about them while you're writing through, right? Because otherwise they'll be left with all these questions and objections that you won't be there to answer. So your copy already needs to have all the answers there. And finally, you need to incorporate urgency and scarcity in there for them to actually want to take action right then and there, right? Otherwise, they'll think they'll come back to it, they'll get in their car, they'll drive, they'll go home, they're having an argument, or whatever, they'll forget about what you're talking about. So 5 days later, they might come back to it, and the same cycle might repeat. So you want to incorporate some sort of urgency and scarcity that's real, so that they can actually take action right there. If you are dealing with multiple people, so you're not just talking one-on-one, you're dealing with multiple people, and especially if you're in the B2B business, then you're likely going to enter a phase of negotiation before you get the sale. The whole point there is you need to find commonality, common interest in what you're doing now, and also a common goal. Pretty much everything we've talked about so far is going to remain the same, that you need to build rapport, you need to figure out what their shared outcome is, and you need to, one difference is in the beginning, talk about the conditional close. This is just like, hey, if this product met your value, then would we go ahead? And you want to move past any differences you have. Normally, you'll find when there's multiple people involved, there's difference of opinions, and things will be slightly not exactly linear, right? With a one-to-one, you've got that nice little curve that can go like that. When it's multiple people, it might not be so simple. So you want to be able to discuss the areas that need attention while you're there. You want to figure out what their true needs are. Remember, like if there's multiple people and if it's a B2B, you need to understand the needs of the individual person and their needs as a business. Okay, so their true needs might be different. And then you want to be able to discuss the options of how you can move forward. So what is it that they actually want to get from you? And then you get the resolution. You've got found common ground, you're in the middle stage, you found out the differences and what they want, and then you can figure out what the next best step is. You summarize everything you've learned so far, and then you can form an action plan. Super simple. It might be for them, like, oh, okay, I'm going to send a proposal. Great. When is the next time for us to meet to talk about the proposal? Okay, who needs to be involved to discuss this? Who's the decision maker? Who's the ultimate party who signs off? Right? All these different things. And again, the summary point is so important because you're summarizing everything you've learned so far, which means that you're all on the same page. Okay, you've gained agreement that you all know what you're talking about. You all know exactly what you need to do next. Like on the negotiation side, you need to understand the individual needs as well as their business needs. If you're on the sales side, you just need to understand who the decision maker is, right? And then finally, in the negotiation bit in the bottom, you still want to do a lot of listening, but you also want to talk about your opinions, right? Because it's way more of a discussion where you're really trying to figure out a way to solve the problem they have. Versus on the sales side, you're just listening, asking intentful questions, and then finally just addressing some concerns. And usually on the sales side, the one-to-one basis, you can probably get them to pay or get agreement on payment terms or contracts. On the negotiation side, you're most likely going to have to send a contract afterwards. So you agree on the scope of delivery, the price, and any other guarantees that you might offer. And these are things that you guys just need to keep in mind. It's, like I said, summary, really important, right? So we're summarizing some of the key things that you need and broken down into 4 segments. The first one is mindset. There needs to be a mindset that you need to be aware of before you get onto any calls so that you know what you want to talk about. Okay, the first thing to be aware of is that you will get no's. Like, it doesn't matter who you are, how expert you are, whoever you can think of that's the best in your industry will get no's. A book that I would highly recommend for those of you who have a fear of no is to read Go for No. It's a really short book and it legit just changed the way you think about no's, and it's super, super helpful. You're in the business of diagnosing the problem. Okay, you're not in the business of solving the problem yet. That's your offer, right? That's your service or product. But when you're on a sales call, your job is to diagnose the problem. Third is don't be desperate. People will smell desperation from a mile off, and they need to have positive attitude. The next one is a pre-call prep. And this is super important. Like, most people who are successful will tell you that this is the most important step. And it's that you need to make sure that you know your prospect. Okay, have your equipment and script and all that kind of stuff ready so you're not fumbling about and don't know what to do while you're speaking or while you're on the call. Note taking, if you do computers or by hand or whatever, have everything you need ready. Another thing, actually, you raised a really interesting point. Do you guys have a way to accept payment? This is a really interesting question because I was doing a workshop once and there were some people in there who were there, had a business set up, they're trying to offer services, they're doing sales, but they didn't have a way to accept payment. So if they got a client ready, they couldn't pay, right? So have you got like a payment processor set up, whether it's PayPal, Stripe, or an in-person like iZettle, whatever you have? Like, make sure you have those things, a bank account, like have those things pre-set up, because you might be surprised. You're on a sales call and the person's like, yeah, I'm ready, let's go. Where can I pay? Here's my credit card. And you're like, oh, I don't have that ready. You don't want to do that. So have that ready. Anyway, know your prospect. So if you've done all the lead generation correctly, then most of the time you should be talking to people who are exactly the right type of audience. Always go for the win-win. Remember, we're in the business of trying to help people. Whether you sell a product or a service, you're really there to just help people and add value to their lives. So go for that win-win. Don't just coerce somebody into buying your product if it's not really going to help them. Like, just be honest and say no. But equally, if it does help them, then don't be shy of serving them, because otherwise you're doing a disservice. Practice, practice, practice. On the call, you need to be able to clarify everything that you're talking about, right? Ask for permission along the way before you start going into sales. You need to dig into the pains and their needs because you really want to understand it. And then you sell the vacation. Super, super important, right? Don't talk about the features, just the benefits. And then after the call or the close is cut the supply to 1 of 1. This is interesting because most people don't really understand this, but when you can do this, this becomes a game changer. It basically is that how I said in a negotiation, you don't want them to compare the price. You don't want to become a commodity. You want to become a person who can deliver the most value. So they want to compare that. So you want to try and do that as much as possible. So you want to talk about the outcome that they want and how you can solve it and how your thing is most valuable, not how your thing is the cheapest. Because most of the time what people do is they look at the competition, they're like, okay, cool, like I can price myself somewhere in the middle of that and I'll do more than what everybody else is doing. So what you're basically doing is doing more for less. And how long can you keep that model up for? It doesn't really make sense, right? Because if you keep adding more and keep lowering the price, at some point you'll be diminishing returns. You'll be losing money and still delivering all this stuff, and you'll hate what you're doing. So you want to try and figure out the value ladder the other way around so you can deliver most value and then be the person who charges whatever the value is worth. And remove any friction. Like I said, have a payment processor ready, have your contracts ready. Like, if they want to sign up then and there, like, let's go for it. Have your welcome sequence, all that kind of stuff ready, so that if they want to go, they go. And then follow up. If you don't close them on the first call, don't forget to follow up. So many people forget it, but the money's in the follow-up, right? Most people, you will not get a yes or a money on the first call you ever do. Most of the time, you'll probably have to do 2 or 3 calls. People buy emotions. Okay, they're buying your product, yes, but it's just a gateway to their emotions. Even in the Tom example, Tom didn't care about your specific weight loss product that you have. Tom only cared that he lost the weight at the end of the day and how he felt because of it. Right? He wanted to be able to present really well without being embarrassed, whatever. So Tom wanted to buy the emotions. If he could buy the direct emotion without your product, that's excellent. So you got to make sure your product is like a gateway to their emotion, or your service is a gateway to their emotion. If you have any questions, then let me know.
I hope you've enjoyed learning about the end-to-end sales process. If you did learn something new, then hit the like button, maybe share with a friend. It's going to help the channel massively. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to this channel. And while you're here, you should check out this video because YouTube thinks you're going to love it. And I will catch you in the next one.